What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we continue in this week of getting updates from cases that we have been following and will continue to follow as they work their way towards trial. And we are talking about Sheriff Mickey Stines today in his case where he allegedly took the life of a judge and what criminal charge he should be held guilty for and made accountable for is still up in the air because of a lot of the information that continues to come out. And over the last couple weeks, or I believe even maybe months since we've done an update on this case, a lot more information has come out. Multiple accusers that are saying the judge manipulated them and used them and wronged them. Some of them think Mickey Stines is a hero. We're going to hear from a couple of those accusers, some snippets from some interviews that they did. We know about a lot of the talk and discussion about whether or not Mickey Stines' daughter was involved and the judge's relationship with the daughter. And they called the daughter right before all this happened. Is that what caused Mickey Stines to snap? Well, the daughter took to TikTok to answer some of those questions and to talk about her feelings on this case. And then we're going to get into some of the witness statements about what was going on in Mickey Stines' head leading up to the day the crime was committed, including a lot about the civil case. And we're also going to hear some snippets from one of the civil lawyers that was suing a lot of people, but also Mickey Stines. What was he suing Mickey Stines for? Was it his official capacity? Was it his leadership role as a law enforcement officer, as the sheriff, or was it specific wrongdoing for Mickey Stines? What was the worry? Why was Mickey Stines so wrapped up in this? Why was it causing him to break? Was he having a break? All of the evidence and the information that's come out is going to help us kind of feel what is the defense in this case? What are Mickey Stines' chances? What is the public going to view this case like? Is it a judge, a victim that people really respect and love and want justice for? Or are people going to start saying Mickey Stines is a hero and they're glad that this happened, which is concerning on a whole other level, but how will that affect the criminal case? We're going to get into all that and more. And of course, we are going to answer your questions. So let's get to it. All right, so we are all here and ready to roll on this Thursday. It is almost the weekend, which is always nice, and the weather's beautiful here. It was 38, feels like 28. Why do they do the feels like? Does anybody ever know that? Feels like 28 earlier this week in Florida, which I thought I was going to die. But I made it through. And I'm here, and now it's like absolutely perfect outside, sunny and 70-ish. But the first clip we're going to watch is from a recent interview that Brian Enton did with an alleged victim / victim's daughter. He did other interviews. I think we've talked about them before. We're going to hear another clip from another person that called Mickey Stines a hero and said the judge used her basically for certain acts and gave her money for them, which opens up an interesting discussion. Is this, something that is sex workers, or is it manipulation as part of the judicial process? Seems like that's what the lawsuit was about. That might be something from, the outside that we're looking in at. But I think it's important to also think when we hear these interviews, how reliable are these witnesses? Will they be somebody that could potentially be a witness in the criminal case? If they are, which side would call her? How would they use the testimony? So that to me is important as we listen to some of these clips. So let's take a listen, and then we'll talk about how either lawyer could potentially use this on whatever side they may, if they were going to call her as a witness, if she would be reliable. And I don't mean like she's lying. I mean, we know the rules of evidence and reliability, and certain witnesses can testify to certain things and certain ones can't. It doesn't mean they're lying. It just means they might not be the best person to be able to testify to that. Is something hearsay? Is there an exception? Things like that. So we're gonna think through that as we listen to this interview.
Did you first meet the judge?
So my first.
And by the way, we're going to hear a little bit about it at the end, but it's important to point out this person being interviewed had a very, very difficult life, tough times coming up. And, so a lot of her circumstances were outside of her control and very difficult for it to hear what she's had to go through. So just be ready for that as you listen to the story. But let's take a listen.
Encounter was when I was
the judge.
So my first encounter was when I was a juvenile, which it wasn't nothing out of the ordinary because I was put on like a juvenile probation, and then I went to juvie. So then later on in life, when I become of age, I was on drugs and stuff, and I ended up doing some time in jail. And in 2019, I went and decided to get clean and go through the ARC program. And he kind of personally reached out to me within those times, like helping me, tell me he was proud and stuff. But then an indication that kind of alarmed me to know that all the rumors I heard my whole life about him is he invited me to this seminar in March of 2021, a drug seminar while I was in rehab, basically to tell a little bit of like my story. And he was just trying to like, I guess, make me like a poster child. I don't know, but he was just trying to share my story and stuff. But he was just very weird during that. Like before, he was just very inappropriate, to me.
Like what happened?
So let's hear what happened first.
Was he calling?
He
Yeah.
he just told me like if I ever needed anything, just to come to his chambers. Like if I ever got in trouble, that I could come and talk to him. But like us women know what that means. You know what I'm saying?
So that's her personal experience with the judge. And to me, I don't think that would be something that would be allowable in a criminal case. Obviously, the defense might want to bring that up, like talking about the bad character of the victim. I don't think it's something that's relevant. I think there's some speculation in there. She's kind of making inferences that, he said this and we women know what that means. Maybe not enough to even get to it if that character evidence even would be appropriate for this trial when talking about the victim, right? I just don't think anything she said about her own personal encounters with the judge would be relevant in this criminal case. Now, what they will do is in the court of public opinion, she and another witness we're going to hear from, it makes the judge look like the bad guy, the victim look like the bad guy. And we've seen that in a lot of high profile cases recently and in the past. And what do you do as a prosecutor when the victim starts to look like the bad guy and then the defendant starts to look like the good guy? Is that what's happening here? You guys tell me from your perspective in the public, is that what's happening here? Or not? And that because it's possible they're both bad guys, right? And they're both defendants in the civil lawsuit and they turned on each other, and bad guys can turn on each other too. So, it's these kinds of public sentiments, I think, that some of these interviews, and I think people in the community know a lot more about this case than the rest of the country, and the rest of us are just getting a look in as to how bad it really was.
And he just made me feel very uncomfortable. He just looked at me like a dog. But most of my story is my mom too, that's why.
So now she's going to get into her mom's story and her mom's encounter with the judge. And we know that if she is going to, Jenny said, sorry, Peter, women get a sense when the guy is behaving inappropriately. That's fine. I'm not saying that's not true. That's not what I meant by that comment. What I'm saying is I do not think that version of events she just spoke about to Brian Enton is something that a prosecutor would use from a witness. I don't think, or even the defense, if they wanted to get it in about the judge, I don't think either side is going to use that from a witness. I don't think it would be considered reliable. That's my opinion. I believe it'd be speculation, legally speaking. That's it. Okay. Not to mention inappropriate character evidence of the victim, but we don't need to get into all of that. Okay. So now she's going to talk about her mom's story, which again, who would be the best person to testify about this? Obviously her mom. Her testifying about this is hearsay. Could there be an exception? Her mom has passed away. And if there's an unavailable declarant, sometimes you can get information in through another witness. It may be something worth arguing. But again, I'm not so sure this is something that would come up unless Mickey Stines said, I was in fear that he was going to do this to me, or he told me he was going to do this to somebody else. I had to stand in their shoes. It gets kind of murky. You're having to kind of jump steps to get this in. So again, I think it'd be difficult to get this story in, but again, it does shed light and provide context as to what's going on. And is this going to be a sympathetic victim? And what is the state going to be able to argue about who this victim was and the position he was sitting in? Because you would think a judge, a sitting judge who's doing a lot of good and fighting for justice and making sure that only just results are coming from his courtroom would be a pretty sympathetic and likable victim.
I was reaching out because my mom had a lot. She's no longer here anymore, but my mom had the sexual stuff with him and all that.
When you say she's not here, did she pass away or?
Yes, actually, she'd done a lot of jail time. She was actually a drug addict, but she actually passed away. She didn't even get to come home. The Letcher County jail didn't take care of her at all while she was sick. But like the beginning of like her drug, like she used to go have sex with the judge to get out of trouble. I remember she got my dad in some very big trouble. She went and had sex with the judge. When people are on drugs.
So that's definitely not, a paid for transaction necessarily, like some of the other people may make it seem like. This seems like specifically the judge was using his power and position, according to this witness and her mom, that he was using that position to manipulate these women into performing these acts with him. So that's, the context is important as to how we get there.
Because they're so numb and, people don't like going to jail and stuff. I'm sure it upset her from all the drugs and all the abuse and trauma that my mom went through. Like, she was not in the right state of mind at all. She was very traumatized from a lot of stuff that has been done to her. I do know that. My grandparents actually raised me, so like my mom was in and out of my life a lot too when I was younger.
How well known was it that, if you had sex with the judge, you could get out of things?
Very well known. Like every girl, like everybody knows that. Even with lawyers too. It's not just the judges. It's like a lot of people that's done this for years. Like
So a lot of people have known this for years, which that leads me to believe who's going to be a witness in this case? How widespread is this going to be? How powerful are the people involved going to be? Will we hear from other lawyers and judges and law enforcement in the case about what was going on? And again, a lot of this, where to me, it's helpful to Mickey Stines. A lot of the updates we're going to give today are helpful to Mickey Stines because we know he's trying to prove a mental break. He's trying to prove some kind of diminished capacity. He's trying to get a lesser charge than what he's currently charged with, right? Which is the intentional homicide, which we've all seen the video and it looks bad and it looks intentional and it looks like he deserves the utmost charge and penalty. But a lot of these updates are starting to inch us towards the defendant's argument, not that he's going to get off, not that he's going to go home, but that maybe a lesser charge is more appropriate, which was very difficult to fathom when you just watch that video with no audio, right? Think back to when you first saw that video. What did you think happened? Seems like an open and shut case. Like, what are we talking about? There's nothing for a lawyer to break down. It's shocking, yeah. But then you get into the intricacies of the law and how you get to a lesser included in Kentucky and what arguments they need to make. And to me, the more people are involved, the more everybody knows how it is, like this witness is saying, cops and judges and lawyers, everybody knew how it was. If you don't want to be a part of it and you want to step out from it, or you're caught in the crosshairs of the civil lawsuit and you feel all the walls come tumbling down on top of you of everybody else's sins, and you're like, I was the sheriff. Now, did you turn a blind eye? Did you have a hand in it? I don't know. But you start to feel that pressure and that causes you to break. Well, maybe now we are looking at a different charge as the more appropriate charge.
Well, it's been over decades that this stuff has really been going on. With my memo, yes, because
did nobody have a duty to report? Tons of people had duties to report this. Just because you have a duty to report doesn't mean you're going to, right?
I know this sounds weird and stuff. I was needing to get an expungement, and my memo was really trying to put me up to go see Judge Mullins just to get me out of my expungement. But families know that stuff too. I don't know if all families do that with their kids, but I mean, like my memo was trying to get me just so I could, have a better life and stuff. Like families are aware of this stuff now. I don't know if they've ever, put them up to do stuff like that. But from my personal experience, like, yeah.
What would your mama say?
She'd just be like, oh, you just need to go see Kevin Mullins and he'll fix it for you. You just need to go down there and see him and stuff. Like she knew I didn't want to go, and she knew that I could go, I really try to keep, like, I'm only 29. I've been in a lot, like I've lived a hard life, and I really try to not do bad anymore, so that's kind of why I never, like after rehab and all that, like that's why I never really went back, because I don't really want to live like that no more,
With the drugs, like so many people, it seems like in that area have had issues with drugs. Like, how do you describe it? Like, how do people get sucked in?
It's a very small area. There isn't nothing to do. You really have to have an education to even have any money there. The coal mines used to be like a lot of income for people back in the day. But I think people get sucked into it because there's nothing to do. It's very small. And, generational curses, families do it, moms and dads there do drugs with their kids there. It's just it's crazy. So I just think that it's just a lot of nothing to do there. Families just not knowing any better to do, just nothing to do there.
What do you mean by generational curses?
I just feel like, so I'm really big in my faith. I'm not going to say like I'm a Christian. I am a Christian, but I have a bigger relationship with God than whatever. So I just think that there's a lot of generational curses there. You know, a lot of.
Yeah, okay. I see some people. This is not the sheriff's daughter. This is a different person who claims to be a victim of the judge, and her mom was a victim of the judge, and everybody knew what it was like there. The victim's daughter. We're going to watch a clip from her next. I'll make it clear when it's the sheriff's daughter. This is not the sheriff's daughter.
My story, my mom and dad both done drugs with me. They weren't very motherly or fatherly to me. So that's a lot of what happens back there. I just think that it just goes back, and I just think my generation is cursed a little bit. I know that sounds crazy, but that stuff is real.
So people actually do drugs with their parents.
Yes.
You did that.
Yes.
I guess it's hard to know right from wrong then if you're doing it with your,
Yeah, like, well, I grew up seeing my mom and dad do it my whole life.
And these are, generational issues. And again, these are things that create so many problems in society and in certain communities. Doesn't make it right what anybody else did to victimize them. It doesn't make what they did right, and their part in it, and committing crimes and then trying to get at them by committing other crimes. And they were vulnerable and not in positions to even stand up for themselves because of the positions of power. And that's why they still are victims. But there are some, we have a lot of civil cases where there are unsympathetic victims or victims that have their own issues that jurors are not going to like. And you're kind of seeing an illustration of that with this person.
So I was like, well, if my mom and dad's doing that, well, it's okay for me to do it. My mama and papa did raise me right. Like, my mama and papa were very successful. They raised me with right morals, but it didn't fill the void of them being my mom and dad. So it made me very rebellious. And then I thought that, I started doing drugs when I was 16. That's when my grandmother let me start kind of having a relationship with my mom, because she knew that it was hard on me all these years without her. And I just started doing drugs with her because I thought, like, well, maybe she might love me now. I don't know. It's just weird.
What kind of drugs?
At first, it started out like as drinking and weed, and then pills like Xanaxes, pain pills. I got on Suboxone really bad. I did abuse that at first. And then by the time I was 18, meth started coming in the area. And that thank God I didn't get on no fentanyl or anything. I went to rehab before that stuff came there. But weed, it was alcohol, weed, pills, and then meth.
Did you
And then
ever
all of it together.
did you ever know the sheriff? Sheriff Stines?
Yes, Mickey. Yes. He was actually the bailiff for like 20 years in Kevin's court. He was a very good man.
What did you think when you
So all that about the judge, and obviously Mickey Stines and the victim had a very long relationship together, but she says Mickey Stines was a very good man.
heard that he shot the judge?
I thought he was losing his mind. I didn't know what was going on.
I'm joined now by Al.
She thought he was losing his mind. So isn't that interesting? Because there's a lot of questions around, obviously, his mental state at the time. So very, very sad. I think that there were a lot of lives affected by a lot of things going on there. And I think this is just scratching the surface. And everybody that has spoken out about it said there's so much more. Everybody knew about it. This affected so many different cases. Ashley said, who's investigating all these allegations? It's a great question. It's a great question. Somebody needs to, that's for sure. Does this not call into question all of the previous trials? So I don't know what kind of judge Mullins was, or if he had trials, or what effect he had, but a lot of times he was letting people off that shouldn't have gotten off, which is different than making sure people go to prison if they don't deserve to go to prison. So, I don't know how this will affect prior cases that he was involved in. Are the judges there appointed or elected? I think in Kentucky, they're elected. You can always have a judge appointed to, like when there's a vacancy, but I believe they're elected in Kentucky. Okay, so now we're going to jump to the video of Mickey Stines' daughter speaking out on TikTok. And This is important for a couple of reasons. Perspective number one, like, what is the story here? We heard her name mentioned. How is she involved? A lot of people thought the worst. A lot of people ran with the worst. I don't think there's anything. I think there was a lot of well-intentioned people that said, was she a victim here? Was he standing up for his daughter? Was he standing in her shoes? And, that's okay for thinking that she may have been involved based on the stuff, in my opinion, right? Based on what we heard. But the people that would run with rumors and create stories and say they know this for a fact, and it really affects people's lives. And, anybody that comes on YouTube or social media or talks about this stuff really has to understand these are real people on the other side. And I think some people get that rude awakening sometimes if something happens to them and they feel what it's like on that other side. Or I'm with dealing with a lot of criminal defendants and victims of horrible circumstances. And when your life gets put through the ringer, even if it's not a public high profile thing, but it's just a public lawsuit that you're fighting, that the other side gets to dig into your life and you feel like a criminal defendant or a victim of the system, regardless, it's very, very difficult to deal with. So she's going to let us in a little window into what she's going through, how she's feeling. Is she involved in this case? Do we think she'll end up being a witness in this case? Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lila Stines. I am 18 years old, and I am from Letcher County, Kentucky. Most of you may know me, and the others may recognize my last name. On September 19th, a little over a year ago, a lot of people's lives changed forever, including mine. I'm not going to go into detail. I will not be talking about it, but I just have one question. Do you all not have anything better to do than to sit and gossip? You are taking my pain and making it your pleasure. You're taking our stories and turning them into big entertainment pieces, jokes, and for that matter, you're making it your income. Since when did that become okay? So my advice to the people doing that, get a job, do something meaningful with your life, and contribute to society in a positive way. That's all. I come on here today to address a couple things about yesterday's video. When I posted that video, I only had about 950 followers. I did not think it would go anywhere. I thought, people from home's gonna see it, maybe a couple others, and that'll be that. So the first thing I want to say is I had good intentions with that video. A lot of you were asking what stories, what do you mean by gossip? And what I mean by that is the stories that were made up about me and the other party. And that is where the gossip comes in at.
So I assume she means the judge when she says the other party. And yeah, I know a lot of people are going to have a lot to say about her telling people to stop talking about her and things like that. And then, she goes on TikTok and talks about it herself. I get that. You got to understand where somebody's coming from and what their life looks like and what their days look like and how brutal it must be and hard it must be. Her life's been flipped upside down. And it's got to be impossible. You can't imagine what she's going through. So give as much grace as you possibly can to her. Because I know people are going to have thoughts about that. Now, is it fair for people to talk about a public case? In my opinion, obviously, the answer is yes. But should we try to treat people with grace, understand they're human beings, not try to ruin somebody's life and make up rumors about them or stories about them that we don't know are true? I think that's important as well. Take things with a grain of salt. So she probably got some pushback, my guess is, on the first video. So she kind of made this follow-up video. And she's 18 years old, right? Trying to navigate this world and potential. I'm backing it up a little bit from the beginning of the second video so we can kind of see the update she's giving from the first video. But does she know how to deal with this? Would anybody know how to deal with this, right? Especially at 18 years old. So this is how she's dealing with it. Maybe she will provide more updates. Maybe she won't. But she's going to specifically say it's the people. Discussion is different from gossip. I completely agree with that. I could not agree with that more. So she's going to address that and specify. And then she's also going to make it very clear that those things are rumors and she has no relationship with the other party and none of that is true. And she's not going to be some star witness for the defense to say, my dad stepped in to protect me. Now, but Peter, you said a lot of this stuff was good for the Mickey Stines defense. I'll tell you why and how this is still good at the end.
Yesterday's video. When I posted that video, I only had about 950 followers. I did not think it would go anywhere. I thought, people from home's going to see it, maybe a couple others, and that'll be that. So the first thing I want to say is I had good intentions with that video. A lot of you were asking what stories, what do you mean by gossip? And what I mean by that is the stories that were made up about me and the other party. And that is where the gossip comes in at. I wasn't actually talking about the situation and what actually happened itself. I was more leaning towards the rumors that had been spread about me. I am aware of how serious.
She says she's not specifically talking about the situation itself, meaning people talking about the case is how I read that. I could be wrong about it, but she did clarify that.
This is and how rumors that had been spread about me. I am aware of how serious this is and how much of a big deal it is. I was not talking about news or social media. I was simply talking about the people who sit at home behind a keyboard all day and say terrible things about my name. That's who I was talking about. At the end of the day, I'm just human. I'm just trying to learn how to process and cope with it all. I do want to add one more thing. A lot of you were saying, girl, this happened a year ago. Like, why are you still going on about it?
Who in their right mind would ever say that? It's like, if this was your dad and it happened a year ago, it's like, shouldn't you just be past this? That was a wild one to me. It's a wild. Sometimes as somebody with a little bit of experience in this, one person commenting something can feel like a big deal, but it's really not. And it's not the sentiment of everybody. My guess is that's probably what happened here, is that somebody said this, but most people I don't think would be like, why aren't you over it already? It's been a year.
To you, it happened a year ago. For me, when I wake up, it's the first thing I see on my phone. It's the last thing I see when I lay down, and I'm not looking for it. It's just right in my face. I have to deal with it every day when I wake up. So no, it's not gone. It's not died down. It won't for a while.
So that's the end of that. And again, as a kid who didn't grow up with social media as a kid and how hard it is to stay away from things, I can only imagine what it's like for her and the world she lives in now, the whirlwind that she did not choose to be in the middle of. She did not choose to become a noticeable or recognizable person because of this. It's brutal. It's brutal. So we will do our best to not gossip and not spread anything poorly around. We will, though, discuss the news, the law, the cases, things like that. So why is this, or how is this good for Mickey Stines? How would his defense team use this? She's like, that's not true. I didn't have a relationship with the other party. Does this add then to the delusion that Mickey Stines had going on in his head? What he thought was happening and going on? Is this going to add to his diminished mental capacity, that he did not know what was going on? He did not know right from wrong. He did not understand what was going to be the result of his actions and the seriousness of them. Is that going to be part of the case? Because if he's like, we have all these videos of him saying, oh, this is happening, that's happening, they're doing this to me, why are they doing that to me? And it's like, dude, none of that is happening. Everybody keeps telling him none of that is happening, including, it seemed like, his daughter. Like, you didn't have to protect me. Nothing was happening. Nothing was happening to me. Chris, sorry, I saw you post this earlier. It's kind of a tough video to slip this one in. But your levity is always appreciated by me. I know Peter's just a civil lawyer, but please hit that like button and subscribe. Yes, everybody, please do. This case is brutal. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no redeeming qualities to this case. There's no glass half full to this case. But there are some more documents I've seen coming out. Some of them we've talked about before. Some of them we haven't. And then one of the lawyers that filed the lawsuit where Mickey Stines was a party and a defendant to, went on Vinnie Politan and made some comments. So we're going to take a look at that video. We're also going to listen to a few clips of what witnesses are saying about the mental state of Mickey Stines in the days leading up to the crimes, which I think are really, really important components to this case, and probably something you can expect to be part of the defense's case when they argue maybe again to the judge. Maybe they bring it to the prosecutor's office again and say, you've overcharged him. Let's make a plea deal for a lesser included. And if that doesn't happen, then it's absolutely, in my opinion, an argument they're going to make to the jury. So let's take a listen here. And these are going to be a bunch of different clips. Some are going to be news clippings from court documents. Some are going to be comments made. It's a bunch of different clips from this video.
Take a listen.
Attorney and Mullins' close friend Daniel Dotson said that the defendant never threatened him or Judge Mullins, but that he was so concerned about Mickey's demeanor, he contacted the Kentucky Bar Association to determine what action he could take. Dotson said that Mickey was, quote, criminally insane. Whitesburg Police Chief Tyrone Fields told Dotson that on Wednesday night, the night prior to the shooting, that Mickey had called him, and when he got off the phone, he told his wife, "That son of a bitch has lost his mind," in reference to the defendant. Christine Bowling, LCSO staff, told the KSP that the staff had stated they were concerned about Mickey due to his very strange behavior. Specifically, the day prior to the shooting, the sheriff told her that Daniel Dotson had told him to give him money and kill himself, or they were going to kill Caroline and Lila, the wife and daughter. LaShawna Frazier, staff of LCSO, told KSP that she had asked Dr. McDougal to move up the sheriff's upcoming doctor's appointment because she was very worried about him. Frazier stated that the sheriff was encouraged to go to the doctor because he had some kind of psychosis going on. Frazier stated that en route to the doctor, the sheriff stopped by his wife's office to check on her. Sherry Stines, the defendant's aunt, told KSP Detective Anthony Trotter that Mickey was concerned that someone was on the back street near where he lived watching his house. She stated he didn't act like himself. She stated that he could not sleep. Sherry Stines called and informed Trotter that Mickey had called her on the day of the shooting and asked about where his grandmother nicknamed Bones was that day. Bones had been dead for 3 years at the time of that call.
So, as you can tell, the defense is using comments made by all of these witnesses about the mental state of Mickey Stines. He was not in his right mind, and that is literally leading right up to the crime. So these are developments that are very real. And I'll just say, like, as a prosecutor, when you have to make decisions like this, it's very, very difficult, because we can look at this and be like, oh, obviously he's overcharged, just lessen the charge, take a plea deal. His mental diminished capacity, he had that issue. He's not guilty by reason of insanity. They don't have that in Kentucky, but this is how you can get it down based on the mens rea, the mindset criminally that a defendant has. So let's just do that easy, but it's not that easy, right? Like, you're a prosecutor, you're fighting for justice. If this guy really did this, it's dangerous. I don't know how it works in Kentucky, but in Florida, you do your mental health evaluation and eventually you can get out. It's obviously not guilty by reason of insanity, but what is the sentence going to be? Is he still a danger to the community? How can you fight for the victim and the victim's family? Which, again, all the public sentiment and thoughts maybe the victim's not that great of a guy, that can also affect how a prosecutor looks at this and fighting for this justice. And what does this justice look like? And was Mickey Stines, did he actually help the community by doing this? Doesn't mean he's not going to get punished, right? Of course, vigilante justice is not justice. And we've talked about that in other cases, whether it's Luigi Mangione, and people talk about, oh, that's great, he's a hero that he did this. Like, taking someone's life is never the answer, in my opinion, unless obviously it's in self-defense, which neither of those two cases are really claiming that. But it's a difficult proposition and situation for a prosecutor to be met with in trying to make this decision. All right, let's listen to the next clip here.
Again, this is from the interviews that the Kentucky State Police did. An attorney named Daniel Dotson also told the Kentucky State Police that he spoke to Judge Kevin Mullins and told him that Mickey was, quote, losing it and, quote, couldn't take this kind of pressure, in reference to the civil suit involving, quote, some crack bleep wanting money.
So, Mickey Stines can't take this kind of pressure. He was losing it. So what is his involvement in this lawsuit? What is everybody else's involvement in this lawsuit? How did we get here? Why is Mickey Stines involved? Would you ever expect something like this? Has he ever done something like this in the past? Very interesting. It's interesting to get all these comments about all these people that saw signs, yet nobody did anything at the time.
Ponder.
All right. So and I'm going to put this back up. So the man on the left who is wearing like the black undershirt, the older guy out of the two that are not Vinnie Politan, that is one of the lawyers involved in the civil lawsuit. So we're going to listen to a little clip. They're going to, look at some more documents, and then we're going to hear a little bit from this lawyer about what was Mickey Stines' involvement. Why was he a defendant in this lawsuit?
What was revealed in these papers filed by Mickey Stines' attorney in the same interview, attorney Daniel Dotson ponders. So he's thinking out loud, ponders if Judge Mullins was supplying information in the civil suit and suggests that the Kentucky State Police talked to Ned Pillersdorf to determine if Mullins was supplying information because Mullins, quote, thought Mickey was trying to get him. Ned, what does that mean to you? And were you getting fed information by the judge?
So this is Ned, the guy that they were just talking about. And so now these are people like speculating, but these are lawyers involved. These are people being interviewed by the police. These are people that the defense is going to use as witnesses. Did Mickey think Mullins was sharing information? And is that why he did this? Because if that's why he did this, then that hurts your defense, in my opinion, because that's a very good motive and he knows exactly what he's doing. Or is it another delusion that Mullins was never doing that? Mickey Stines was just so paranoid and he had a mental break. He was literally losing it. Was Mullins paranoid that Mickey Stines was going to try to get him? So much going on when you have this type of corruption and it starts to eat at people from the inside out and it all starts to crumble, which good, it should. And you see how these lawyers filing these lawsuits shine a light on it and you start shaking the trees and see what happens and they turn on each other. There is an element to that as well. So let's hear what Ned has to say.
To get back at Mickey because the judge thought Mickey was trying to get him?
Nobody was supplying me information. I was not a very popular person.
Nobody was supplying him information. So if this is something that Mickey Stines swore was true and knew was true, and he swore it, more delusions and paranoia, more evidence of a mental break, more arguments for Mickey Stines' defense lawyer.
In the Letcher courthouse after we filed the lawsuit. And, what's really clear from all of this, you said it, there's been some active delusional thinking going on. And in this case, I think the delusional thinking with these kind of paranoid conspiracies, to be clear, Stines was named in the lawsuit, but actually in his official capacity.
So what does that mean? Stines was named in the lawsuit, but in his official capacity. What does that mean? Because that makes a big difference than if you name, and again, we're kind of getting a preview of who is Karen Reed suing and why. If it's Proctor and Yuri Buchanan and Tully, what in their official capacity as law enforcement? Personally, are you in a position where you have wrongdoing yourself? Or is it the fact that you supervised and didn't train and didn't stop wrongdoing that you are in charge of? There's a big difference, right? In being like a negligent boss versus perpetrating these horrible crimes that they're alleging in these lawsuits. So let's hear his explanation.
To understand the lawsuit, it was that Stines' deputy, Fields, who pled guilty to sexually extorting several women, and where Stines was named was that he knew or should have known this was going on. So there was no real active allegations that Stines was in on the sex. We thought there was circumstantial evidence that he knew or should have known. But, who'd have thunk it that when we filed this lawsuit, and my co-counsel took Stines' deposition, I was there for some of it on Monday, who'd have thunk it that 3 days later he'd shoot the judge? It was a strange deposition. Stines was, he was asked, simple questions, long pauses, no answers. I thought there was something going on, but I had no idea there was all these paranoid, hallucinating thoughts going through his mind. I just thought he was odd.
So he says He didn't know what was going on in his mind. It was kind of a simple definition. It wasn't, difficult questions. It wasn't, he basically was saying, because, I think it was Mickey Stein's lawyer himself, because he's given some interviews that we've watched, saying, oh, he's getting deposed and there's all this pressure. If you're looking at this guy does not look like he's a jerk and really putting the screws to Mickey Stines in this deposition. And from my perspective, it's like, was this even that stressful of a deposition? And again, to a lawyer, no big deal. Remember from the Don Adelson case, it's like, oh, no big deal, this litigation. It's like, to normal people, it is a big deal. To people who don't do this every day, it is a big deal. It might not be for this lawyer, but to Mickey Stines, obviously, he said, I didn't know all this crap that was going on in his head. It even sounds like this lawyer is being helpful to Mickey Stines.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, what are your thoughts here on?
All right. So that was all from that clip from the lawyer. And we're going to jump ahead a little bit, and they're going to talk more about personally what Mickey Stines was looking at and what his maybe liability was, or potentially what was, depots are stressful. I agree. I tell clients that all the time. It's like when we talk about filing a lawsuit, I'm like, listen, it's your decision if you want to file a lawsuit or not. Doesn't make a difference to me. It's part of my job. Do it every day. But to you, it's going to make a big difference. And I explained to them what litigation is like, because it's a very big deal. It's very stressful. It's your case, your life that's being dug into, your time that's being taken, right? It's a job for lawyers at the end of the day. And we care about our clients, and it's very important, but it's still a job. And it's so much more than that for the people involved, the deponents, the witnesses, the parties, everybody.
Stines be personally responsible for money? Is there an insurance carrier who has coverage? Does the county cover it? How does that work? So I'm trying to understand his extreme level of stress, whether it comes from losing money, or is it losing reputation, or I'm trying to understand how the lawsuit in the end, if he lost, would personally impact Mickey Stines.
My speculation is I don't think it was money. I think it was more so that his deputy, who was also the ankle monitor person who engaged in the sexual extortion, was just so close to him. And I think that we're talking about a person obviously who's paranoid and delusional and psychotic.
This lawyer says Mickey Stines was paranoid, delusional, and psychotic. That's checking all the boxes that the defense wants to get this culpability dropped down from the highest crime to a lesser included. And this is not somebody that I think wants to help Mickey Stines, by the way.
I don't think the money aspect had anything to do with it. I just think, looking back, I guess we just underestimated the impact the lawsuit had on the people involved. And we had a sheriff who, melted down, whatever you want to use. But, looking back, it's just an astonishing series of events. But I guess the lesson learned is, when you file a lawsuit like this, you sometimes wonder how it impacts people. And it's distressing in the sense that, we filed a lawsuit that led to somebody dying. And that does bother me. On the other hand, I suspect that Stines has probably a pretty legitimate mental illness defense. That's how I look at it as a criminal defense lawyer. But it's no telling how this case is going to turn out.
Oh,
it is a death penalty case.
I know.
So even he thinks it's a pretty good mental illness defense, which again is very different state to state. It's not guilty by reason of insanity in Kentucky, but it does drop it down from a death penalty type of case. So that's really interesting to me that he said all that. And I do agree, like what we lawyers do in these cases really affects people's lives. And that's why we should think about it before we do it. Now, when you're calling out corruption and bad actors and taking them to account, and they do something like this, you cannot feel guilty about it. You cannot feel like this is your fault. That's why every decision you make, you try to make the right decision. You try to do what you believe to be right with what your belief system is, your worldview is, the people you respect, the advice you get. And when you do that, you're going to be wrong sometimes, right? You're not always going to be right. You're not going to bat 1,000. But if you do that, you can lay your head down on the pillow at night. And fighting this corruption and suing the people that wronged these women that were in very vulnerable positions, abused their power. Not only did you do it for them, but you protected so many people in the future. Joanne said, lawyer, you know, it's one rarely time I don't agree with you. You are putting the sheriff as the victim. I am not trying to make the sheriff the victim at all here. As the victim and not the judge. Whatever are those people's opinion, it's not professional psychiatric evaluation. I agree. But I think, and I'll just tell you, because I've handled these types of cases, usually you don't have this much information that's pointing to a mental illness prior to and leading up the crime committed. I think they have a really, really good defense here with the mental illness. And by the way, it doesn't mean he's going to get off scot-free, right? It just means it drops down to the level of homicide. That's what we're talking about here. And I've said, I don't know how many different ways I can say it still doesn't make it right what Mickey Stines did. I don't, the vigilante justice is not something I'm here for. Taking someone's life is not something I'm here for. I'm specifically talking about, does he have a good mental illness defense for that diminished capacity? From my perspective, I think he does. If you think that makes me say he's a victim, I don't think he's a victim. That's what I'm talking about, this lawyer filing the lawsuit. I wouldn't feel bad. It's not your fault. Feel bad for the loss of life, of course, but it's not your fault Mickey Stines and the judge were mixed up in this and they did horrible things and they continue to do horrible things after you filed the lawsuit. It's not your fault as the lawyer, in my opinion. Maybe some people disagree with me on that. Okay, we're going to jump ahead a little more here.
Okay.
On the Monday, we took Sheriff Stein's deposition. He was acting odd, tense, whatever word you want to use.
On September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines makes an unusual request of a staff member of the sheriff's office. They said he told them to get his bulletproof vest. He insisted on going home to check on his wife, and he asked to have someone call and check on his daughter, Lila. That same day, September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines saw a doctor to discuss his mental health. A family member and many friends had been pleading with him to get this kind of help. Then, the day of the shooting, September 19th, Sheriff Stines went on a food delivery trip. It's something he often did. He went with the man who we know as Michael Clark, who says he was working for an addiction recovery program. Stines' defense wrote that a sheriff's office staff member said this about the trip, and that it mirrors what Clark told state police. Quote, "The recipients of the food were acting strangely and were wanting Stines to take the food up on a hill, and the recipients wanted to take them up on a hill on a side-by-side."
On the delivery, there was an incident where our client was asked to deliver to another place that was not the normal place where he did the delivery.
This is also interesting just to think about how much testimonial evidence, video evidence, where Mickey Stines was, CCTV video, video from the streets. I mean, there's going to be a lot of evidence in this case to talk about exactly what happened. And again, this timeline is something that's going to help the defense.
For this particular individual, and the witness will testify that at this point he was very concerned that there was an attempt to isolate him and to cause him harm.
13 minutes before the shooting, we see Sheriff Stines returning with Michael Clark, walking into the judge's chambers.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit more here. Okay, here is just kind of the quick clip of Brian Enton also interviewed this woman, I believe, but this is the woman that says that Mickey Stines is a hero, which, I mean, you tell me, is that what you think? I definitely think public sentiment is different now than when the video first came out. I don't know if it's quite gone this far.
At 16, at some point, did this become what we're talking about here, inappropriate behavior?
The first time that I was alone with him. Yeah, the first time I was alone with him was the first time that he was inappropriate with me, and he had me give him oral.
And she's talking about the judge.
And he paid me for it, and he told me to clean myself up and not to tell anybody.
And again, that sounds maybe a little bit different than extorting in exchange for, you know, some lesser sentence or to cut off the ankle monitor, things like that, that the officer that worked closely with Mickey Stines pled to. But there's a lot of these stories out there.
You at this time?
I was 16. Favors for diversion, favors to pay a fine off.
Okay, now we are talking about extorting it for illegal gain.
Take care of a ticket. I mean, various things in the chambers, somewhere in the courthouse. There's rooms all over the courthouse that I've been taken to over the years. I've met him like at the strip job in Whitesburg, different places. Everybody knows.
Everybody knows. It's common knowledge out there.
Mm-hmm. There are hundreds of victims.
Hundreds of victims, she says. Hundreds. All right, last clip we're going to watch here together, and then I'll answer a couple more questions before we go.
Sympathies in this case.
Well, the fact that the defendant wants to be tried in Letcher County for killing the local judge tells you Stines' defense thinks there's sympathy.
So now they're talking about public sentiment, right? About what do people think about Mickey Stines? Why would he ever want to be tried here? Isn't everybody hate him for killing a judge? How much of the judge's background and allegations against the judge are they going to be able to get into?
You know, the important thing that's really going on in all this is what's changed in my 44 years of practice. If you walk into an Appalachian courtroom, you see lots of women who are easily subject to sexual exploitation. That's one of the reasons we filed a lawsuit. And I don't think, you know, the actual lawsuit references 3 women who were mistreated by, were sexually extorted by Fields. There's actually more, in my opinion. And we don't think this lawsuit, what happened in Letcher County, is isolated. The reality is, in an Appalachian courtroom, lots of women are there, and the only way to get them out is ankle bracelet, drug court, or rehabilitation. And they're so easily subject to sexual exploitation, which is one of the reasons why I initially agreed to get involved in the case, because I don't think what happened in Letcher County is isolated. And it's a real problem where they set high cash bonds, which is a real controversial problem. And all of these women are so easily subject to sexual exploitation. Whether Mullins was involved or not, that's something I think we'll hear about in the criminal case. I assume, you know, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I don't have any love for Stines. I've sued him twice. But I think one of the defenses be he's not really a victim. He was involved in some bad behavior. And whether that's true or not, who knows? But I think that's where this is all going.
So that's what we'll see, right? That's what we're left to see here in the criminal case, how much of it is actually going to come in. How much is the judge going to let in? It's not going to be a whole trial against Judge Mullins. You don't try the case against the victim. How much is going to come in? It's a lot happening in the background. And again, it's really seemingly pointing towards helping Mickey Stines' defense. Kathleen said, there's a Brian Walsh competency hearing tomorrow. I know, off topic. I saved it till the end here. I will have to check it out. I didn't know what day that was, but we'll definitely be breaking it down. If not tomorrow, maybe Monday. Because I know we have Ebony Parker's criminal case and Brian Walsh coming up next week. So we got multiple trials coming up that we're going to try to cover if the Brian Walsh trial goes, because we know we have this competency issue. So we'll see. I don't know, is this hearing going to be streamed? If it is, send it to me wherever you follow me on Twitter or Instagram. So this is a wild story. We're going to continue to follow it, continue to tell me what you guys are watching. Tomorrow morning, we're doing a members only live that you're not going to want to miss if you did follow the Karen Reed case, because we're going to do a tier list of her lawyers. So like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, some product putting in the tier list, or like, football rankings or whatever, maybe the S tier, A, B, C, D tier. We're going to go through all the lawyers and judges involved in Karen Reed's case and tier them out and talk about how they ended up in this tier. It's just going to be kind of fun, but we're going to do that on the members only live. So if you're not a member, become a member. If you are a member, make sure to put that on your calendar, not miss it. I think it's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. That's all we got. Hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe to our page. Until next time, we are out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast, featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know.